I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten. Until now. As a rising sophomore, in my first year at Normandy, marching band started in August, before school followed after Labor Day. People who haven't ever done this may not understand how embracing it is to be part of one cohesive whole. Every person had a special part to play, so it felt important. Everyone was counting on you. We weren't a huge band. Valley Forge High School had a bigger band, and Parma High School was about the same size as us. Normandy was pretty overloaded on woodwinds. Flutes, clarinets, even saxophones aren't really optimal for marching bands. The sound just doesn't carry all that well. One time later, in senior year, after I'd decided to go to Ohio State, I made the ignorant comment to someone that I might try out for marching band there. Their non-reply was just a blank stare. Ohio State marches only brass and percussion. But sophomore year, we began with 2-a-days in August. 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning to beat the heat on the field, and 3 to 5 in the afternoons in the band room to learn the music. We had to memorize it. None of those flagpoles on cats, we would not be marching with lyres or sheet music holders that attached to your instrument. We needed our eyes to stay in straight lines and hit our marks.
Clarinet, eyes right.
We did not need to be reading music. There were quite a few sophomores in band that year. Tracy and I on flute, Josh and some kids from Fay Junior High on trombone, some clarinet players including Tracy Z, who would become part of our friend group, a few percussionists, a couple of saxophones, trumpets, flugelhorns, which I had never heard of before this. It's one of the instruments French horn players used to march with. And the sophomore class also contributed one sousaphone player from Fay. His name was Chuck, and we would actually have one date a few years down the road.
Nah, I'm good. I'll see you around school.
The rest of the band was made up of juniors and seniors, and we sophomores were so intimidated by them. Not that they were hostile, the intimidation was all in our heads. We just wanted to fit in, and being new to the group, we had convinced ourselves we couldn't possibly. 2-a-days were somewhat brutal. Not as bad as what the football players were going through, but it was not easy. We were outside marching in the August heat, even if it was 7 o'clock in the morning. By the time we went inside at the end of the session, armpits were sweaty, t-shirts were stuck to skin, spit valves were dripping, and the sound of traffic had spun up on Pleasant Valley Road. During short breaks, we would all flop down in the grass of the practice field, constantly brushing bugs off of arms and legs, breathing in the smell of the cut grass that was stuck to our shorts. The flutists and brass players raspberrying to relax our embouchures. We were all quite a catch out there in our element. This is why band people date band people. And sure enough, Tracy immediately got fluttery over a sax player named Greg. He was all she could think or talk about that summer. Tracy's family had moved from Seven Hills and bought a house with a swimming pool, just 4 or 5 blocks away from my family's house. She and I spent that whole summer together. We had known one another and been good friends at Hillside, but now with band starting, we became inseparable, attached at the hip, until one of us had to turn a corner in formation. We had the kind of friendship where you know who your person is. No matter what happened, she was the first person I wanted to talk to about it. I remember one time, sitting in her overstuffed rocker in her bedroom, and me asking the unanswerable question.
What can I do to make Jack like me?
Jack was one of the senior French horn players. He was very tall, had laughing blue eyes and curly hair like mine. Only no one knew how curly mine was. I straightened it every morning before I left the house. No matter how it looked by the time I left, by the time I had walked up to the school, it was verging on frisball. This stuff was my kryptonite. I was positive that this hair would send me to the nunnery, despite my lack of religion. Nuns never worried about their hair.
Sister Beth, where do you think you're going looking like that?
As the weeks went by, our marching skills improved, and my interest in Jack flourished. I couldn't figure him out. He seemed like he liked me, but nothing ever came of it. I learned he had broken up with his previous girlfriend only that summer, but I didn't know that right away. Coincidentally, his previous girlfriend had been a year ahead of me at Hillside, and I had always admired her beautiful singing voice. I remembered her belting out, "Bless the Beasts and the Children," when she was in ninth grade during one of the drama productions. I wasn't quite sure what to think of her being the ex of the guy I was currently into. I think it made me insecure about her. Finally came the day of our first football game. We had prepared a pregame show, which would be the same one for every game, a halftime show, which changed every week, and fight songs for playing from the stands. Normandy, Parma, and Valley Forge all shared a home field. It was a stadium called Byers Field next to the Parma Town Mall. When my parents dropped me off at Byers Field, it was in the 50s and had been raining all day, but had slowed to a drizzle. For the pregame show, which for us was always the same, Le Régiment Le Sombre Amuse, although on our sheet music it was just French National Défilé. But it's the same song Ohio State does the script Ohio to. And by the time we started our pregame show, it was raining again. Mud puddles had formed all over the field. A few sophomores marched around the puddles in pregame and were promptly chastised as soon as we got off the field. We weren't big, we weren't spectacular, but damn it, we were going to be disciplined. So let it be written, so let it be done. By halftime, the field was chewed up by the game and positively mucky. I couldn't guess anymore what songs we played at halftime, but I can tell you, we followed formation. Everyone marched their spot, and no one walked around a mud puddle. And by the time we filed off at midfield, there were about 3 people marching in a sock. They had followed directions, they had marched straight into the mud like it was a military operation, and they had walked out of the mud sans a white buck shoe. Even those of us who did emerge with all footwear intact heard slurping sounds as we wrestled our feet free, as close to staying on the beat as we possibly could. This was the first game of many, but watching people rescuing mud-filled shoes from various locations on the field was an eye-opener. Note made that day to myself, tie shoes tighter next time. And once the mud was scraped off and the wet uniforms switched out for dry clothes, we weren't ready to go home to bed yet. After the games, I usually hitched a ride to the band party, where I dumped my band stuff into a bag and tried to make myself presentable.
Does anybody have a spare turban?
Most people went home to change and then returned to the party. The band wasn't cool enough to go to the football after party, so we had our own band party every week. Someone's parents would volunteer to host. There would be snacks and beverages. Some people snuck in alcohol, but no one ever offered me any. I just had Orange Crush or Cokes, but the band party was the hub of musical melodrama. Someone was always angry.
I swear you do this every week.
Someone was always crying.
He hasn't talked to me all night. He won't even look at me.
People made out with someone they shouldn't have been. There were hookups and breakups and temper tantrums. Parents near and far vowed they would not host this debacle again. And yet somehow, there was always a party the next week. Jack's parents hosted one, but I hardly saw him the whole night. He was on duty preventing damage to his parents' house and making sure everyone had everything they needed. At other band parties, Jack would always find me straggling at the end of the night and usually offered to drive me home.
Bethsky, do you need a ride home?
That was the thing. I got rides to parties, but I never had a clue how I was getting home. Most sophomores, including Tracy, had a curfew, but I didn't. I was always one of the last people at every party, and Jack always scooped me up to drop me at home. We weren't normally alone, but we did get to spend some time in the car talking. getting to know one another. I can count on one hand the number of other people who did me the same favor. But while socially it seemed to be all band all the time, academically we did have to take other classes. I had an art class, which I loved. Somehow I ended up sitting at a table with a guy from my grade who came across like a surfer dude, but he had the most beautiful crystal blue eyes. We didn't become friends, but I enjoyed my proximity to popularity for that time. If it had been Tracy at that table, they'd have been hanging out by the weekend and ordering pizza by the next. Another of my classes was advanced chemistry, worth 5 points in the GPA instead of 4 points. So I signed up because there were no prerequisites. The teacher would give 5 extra credit points toward your grade for making a cartoon using the periodic table of the elements. One guy turned in a picture of a dog lying down with X's for its eyes, and on its collar was its name, Io. The element represented was iodide. No one knew what was going on because Mr. S didn't explain anything coherently.
And that's why the Schrodinger's cat state exposes the exothermic spontaneous decay.
Huh?
We tried to listen and asked questions, but none of us learned any chemistry. And we all needed a good grade. So if we got a 40 out of 70 on a test, that meant we had to make 6 element cartoons. Good thing I also had art class. I came out of advanced chemistry with a solid A, despite being clueless about chemistry.
Just roll with it and don't study medicine.
And because I wanted to do everything Tracy did, I followed her into a gym class called Weight Training and Track. I'd have never signed up for this class on my own.
I hope I don't regret this.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, we ran 13 laps, a mile, around the bleachers on the mezzanine in the gym. The second half of class was a weightlifting session. During the running segment, the teacher had one of the guys blasting up-tempo music as we pounded the concrete, past the back of the bleachers, past the wrestling mats, past the office and weight room door. At least with the music blaring, people couldn't hear me gasping for breath. Almost every class we heard Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll, Journey, the Rolling Stones. At least once they played Rick James's Super Freak, but I think word got back to the principal and
They were playing what in the gym?
that fell off the playlist. I was not a pretty sight. I was out of breath before I got halfway around the track. I sweated like a filly in the Triple Crown, and my capacity for weight training was bad. I was so weak. I built muscle fast, but I never got strong. But regardless of my athletic shortcomings, and despite walking as much as I actually ran, there was a senior guy who seemed to take a liking to me. Call him JS. His good friend, PD, simultaneously took interest in Tracy. I guess they thought it could be a 2-for-1 special. JS started writing me notes. PD would get them to me, folded in the triangle nugget that we used to call footballs. In class, the boys would fold them up and flip them with their fingers through someone else's hands acting as goalposts. Maybe JS thought he would impress with his dual entertainment options. Read the note or flick it across the room. Maybe both. But despite their assets, we were leery of JS and PD. Some of the senior girls filled us in that these 2 guys were pretty fast, and we were not. Tracy and I were decidedly slow. So, while the attention was flattering, she and I kept our distance. It was all I could do not to fail weight training and track. I didn't need any seductive distraction to make me even less athletic. By the end of that class, I was only marginally better at running than I had started out, and my bench press was no better at all. And with the constant flurry of classes, practice, gym, and the endless peaks and valleys of teenage emotion, fall quarter was a blur. I skipped the homecoming dance. It was a hoedown theme. Tracy went with her band Crush Greg. The photos were sweet, little flannel cuties flanked by hay bales. But soon the 2 of them were a bust, and Tracy opened her mind to other possibilities. Jack had a group of guy friends who became our group of friends. We all started going out as a gang almost every weekend. There was Jack, Me, Tracy, sometimes Tracy Z, Jack's longtime friends Jay, Steve, and Roger. Others would sometimes join us, and occasionally someone would not appear, but this was our normal weekend crew. There was a lot of pizza in our social calendar, although we also went to people's houses. Sometimes Jay would have us over to hang out in his basement.
Hey, hook up the Betamax.
Sometimes Dean or Keith would do the same. But pizza was our social glue. Tracy and Jay were sniffing around one another to decide whether there was a thing there. Jack and I had been doing the same since September. So when Tracy heard about a polka dance that was going to be held at another school, it seemed like an opportunity. We assumed this would be a normal dance, but with polka music. I didn't know how to polka, but the population in Parma and Seven Hills were largely of Eastern European lineage. Jack's family was of Polish descent. Our friend group was so overwhelmingly Polish, excluding me, that Jack gave me a nickname ending with SKY. Let's call it Bethsky, to indoctrinate me into the heart of the group. Some of them still call me by that nickname today. But Tracy, upon seeing the dance flyer, thought this was our moment. She dropped a hint to Jack and Jay that she had heard about a polka dance and wondered if they were planning to go. The unasked question was,
And will you take us?
she was a social genius, and within a few days, Jack and Jay had invited Tracy and me to go with them to the polka dance. Tracy made me come to her house and tried to teach me the standard polka steps in her basement, but I was terrible. If I got it right one time, I messed it up the next.
Beth, how are you even able to walk?
Tracy told me to just bake it. Jack, she said, would know how to lead. The day of the dance, Tracy and I called one another several times to make sure we were dressed the same way. We couldn't have one of us in a skirt and the other in jeans. We agreed on nice jeans and sweaters. Sparkly, but not tacky jewelry. This was fortunate because my jewelry options were almost none. But the undertone in my mind was, is this just our gang going to the same place at the same time? Or is this a double date? Tracy was sure it was a date. I clung to that while I waited at the kitchen window for the brown station wagon to pull into the driveway. Usually I saw the car backing out after bringing me home. Recently I'd spent Friday or Saturday nights watching it pull in to pick me up, with our other friends already inside. Jack drove. Jack always drove. He was the center of our social universe, steady, confident, goofy, but reliable.
Get in the car, hoser. We got places to be.
He picked up Jay first, then me, then Tracy. We headed to whatever school was hosting the dance. Parma High, I think. Upon arrival, we wondered if we had the wrong night. There were very few cars in the lot, but we were undeterred. Maybe we were just early. We followed almost invisible signs down dark hallways to the school cafeteria, where the band was set up. When they saw us, they scrambled to begin playing. Not one other person was there, aside from a custodian, who had to make sure we didn't trash the place. The four of us were the only people at this dance, aside from the band. This could have been ominous, but with the four of us, it made it all the more fun. They asked if we had any requests. Who knows a polka to request? I didn't even know how to dance. Tracy did. She always knew how to do everything. But Jack and I just joined hands and wobbled, sort of to the rhythm, and his ancestors probably rolled over in their graves.
A Polish boy who can't polka.
They would have complained, with some outraged expletive in a language I can't speak. But the room was dark. The dancing got closer. The music was unfamiliar but fun. I have to wonder whether the band was glad someone had showed up or if they would have preferred to just have a polka jam without us being in their way. We stayed for an hour or two and left to go find some food. Pizza, no doubt. We shook hands with the band and thanked them for our personal concert. Jack held my hand on the way back out to the car. At the end of the night, we dropped off Tracy, then Jay. Then at my house, Jack was too skittish to kiss me, so I gave him a quick peck and went inside. But from this night on, we were a twosome. The clumsy yearnings of a girl reaching for maturity played out over that first few months of high school. Flirtations that went nowhere, classes that I passed despite dubious learning, late nights driving home with people I was just getting to know. All of these things set the stage for the first real relationship of my youth. I still had plenty of self-doubts, but discovering that such an amazing person wanted to be with me went a long way toward quieting them. Thank you for listening. These are my memories, and maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten, but I remember now. If this episode stirred something in you, please consider sharing it, subscribing, or leaving a review. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.